Good afternoon. Today is Wednesday, the 15th of October, 2025, just after 1 o'clock. Welcome to UK Column News. I'm your host, Brian Gerrish. Delighted to have Diane Rasmussen with me in the UK Column studio in Plymouth. So welcome to you, Diane.
Thanks.
We'll be joined by Vanessa Beeley by live link. And we've got a very busy and I think quite an interesting UK column news today, because there's an overwhelmingly female theme to it. Of course, the series Gutsy Women is one of the series for UK column news. Both you, Diane, and Vanessa feature on Gutsy Women. But we've got a number of guests with us today, also women. So this is really interesting. Now, Vanessa, you're going to kick off with an update on, well, the so-called peace deal in Gaza. But the more I read, the more personally I become disgusted with how this is being presented. And it seems to be biased purely in favour of what is good for Israel. But that's my personal take on it. As I've said, we're going to be having a look at Gutsy Ladies, and in particular, the power of activism to fight back against the pernicious policies that are unfolding in the UK. Vanessa's also got a section having a look at, beg your pardon, Diane, let's bring you in first, because you were talking about what's happening with education libraries again, and in particular the grooming of the minds of children. And you've got a guest, Cathy Mudge, who's going to hopefully join us to be talking about the activist side as well. Vanessa's going to be taking a look at Syria and terrible things to do with children and trafficking. We're going to end by having another look at activism in a rather different and rather poignant form. We've got a very good extra today. If you're a UK column member, you can join us. So first of all, Vanessa, welcome. And what are you seeing in Gaza?
Well, I mean, it's certainly not a peace deal. I agree with you there, Brian. It's at best another ceasefire agreement that's already been violated by Israel. At worst, of course, it's a peace trap set by President Trump and his cohorts of ludicrous world leaders that met with him in Sharm el-Sheikh in Egypt. So let's first of all look at a couple of videos from that meeting. First of all, Trump making ludicrous claims about humanitarian aid rolling into Gaza. So let's roll this.
War in Gaza is over. Humanitarian aid is now pouring in, including hundreds of truckloads of food, medical equipment, and other supplies, much of it paid for by people in this room. Civilians are returning to their homes.
So according to Trump, aid is rolling in. We'll come on to that in a second. But I did just want to show Starmer in all his glory. He was basically hidden behind a plant at the back of the group for most of the meeting. And when Trump was speaking, he strategically placed himself directly behind Trump, I think, in the hope that he would be allowed to speak. And Trump at some point calls him out. And let's see what actually happens.
United Kingdom. Where's United Kingdom? Where's our friend? Where? Come here. Is everything going good?
Very good.
That's very nice of you here. These people all came in like 20-minute notice, and I think it's fantastic. And we have so many others, and just so many others.
Starmer really firmly put in his place there, obviously expecting to speak and not given the microphone. But let's move on to more serious matters. So as I said, Israel is already cutting back on the amount of aid that is being allowed into Gaza. Rafah crossing with Egypt is still shut. The number of trucks being allowed to enter is about 50% of those that were promised, so 300 rather than 600. And of course, remembering that there were thousands of trucks coming in on a daily basis when Gaza was still standing prior to October the 7th. And effectively, the claim by Israel is that Hamas has not yet handed over the bodies of the hostages that were killed in the Zionist bombing of Gaza. Hamas has, in effect, handed over some of the bodies, but is still searching for them. Of course, the bombardment since October the 7th destroyed the equipment that Hamas needs to actually move the rubble and identify and find the bodies to hand over to Israel. And that's also been confirmed by the Red Cross, that is also saying this kind of procedure is going to take weeks, not hours or days. Then on October the 14th, Israel violated the ceasefire with deadly attacks on Palestinians, killing 9 people in Gaza that, according to the Israeli claims, went too close to the new yellow line, which the Israeli forces have withdrawn to. So they were killed both by quadcopters, artillery fire, and sniper fire. And then basically, as they were leaving, the Zionist forces burned much of the properties that they had occupied in Gaza. This is a report in Al-Hahad English. They torched Gaza homes, but not only the homes, they torched also the sewage treatment station, and humanitarian aid that was waiting to come into Gaza was burned, according to multiple reports. Then also we mentioned in last week's news that there was potential for the ISIS factions, or the extremist factions, that had been given weapons and were being funded by Israel to turn against Hamas and the resistance factions in Gaza, also being weaponized once the Zionist forces had withdrawn. And in fact, they have been conducting a series of assassinations. This is Gaza's Palestinian journalist Salah al-Jafari, killed by collaborators, as it says here, but working with Israel. So he survived 735 days of bombing attempts on his life, and the genocide only to be killed by the collaborators with Israel that Hamas is now trying to root out. And yes, they have executed members of that group. The prisoners that are being released, I think it's upwards of 2,000 prisoners that have been released by the Zionists. Of course, there's thousands more still in the Israeli jails. This is just one video, some very moving videos that shows the extent of physical and emotional torture that these prisoners have gone through. Some of them have been held for months, some of them have been held for years. This is just one clip of a busload of prisoners arriving back in Gaza. So if we can just play this. And the next image is of, I didn't play the video because it is quite harrowing. This is Dr. Mohammed Asalia, so a doctor that was taken from the Al-Shifa hospital, is now returned to the Al-Shifa hospital with severe heart pain and seizure after his time in the Zionist prisons. Let's hope that he can be helped to recover. And then finally, I just want to play part of an interview with Professor Haim Brashith, who's an associate research fellow at SOAS in the UK. And he's talking about basically what I've said many times, that any ceasefire that is agreed upon by Israel and the Zionist bloc, including, of course, President Trump, is effectively a way for the Israelis to recover from the conflict that they're currently involved in this case in Gaza, to pivot towards another. Let's hear what he says. He does agree with me.
The United States is doing. The United States is ceding military bases everywhere. The Chinese are actually building. The Americans are destroying. So that's the difference between the two systems now fighting for control. And Israel is exactly where it belongs because they specialize in destruction. So I think the implications of a war against Iran might be very far-reaching if the Israelis get their way. First of all, if the war happens, which is almost certain, and secondly, if they get the upper hand, then the destruction is going to advance in Eastern Central Asia at a pace which we haven't seen yet. So this is the desperation of the West, which is spreading to military actions everywhere to stop what is a trading nation supremacy of China. And the Americans.
So effectively, this ceasefire, I won't call it a peace deal, is, in my opinion, the start of something much bigger.
Vanessa, thank you very much for that. I would say the start of something else, which is going to be much worse as it unfolds, but terrible times. And I know that reporting what you are seeing and hearing there in the Middle East makes a real impact on you. So thank you for bringing that to us. We'll be able to discuss a little bit more in UK Column Extra after the news. Well, whilst that's the horrors in Gaza, here in UK, people are faced with an increasing sense of doom and breakdown. And of course, the lead is from the BBC. So just a screenshot from me of their webpage earlier today. But we're very big on the Israeli hostages who've been saved. But the rest of it is a mix of pop stars, pressure, breakdown, sickness, death and depression. And of course, this is backed up by all of the headlines in the papers. Some of it is utterly disgraceful. And for them to call themselves newspapers, I think is just becoming nearly a joke. But what is all this designed to do? Well, it's calculated policy. It's designed to create chaos, fear, breakdown, strife, anxiety, confusion and depression in UK. And many people are telling us here at the UK column how depressed they actually feel as they see things breaking apart. This is deliberate policy by the government, the unit party. It's not accidental. How are we going to counter it? We're going to counter it by sensible, measured activism. It's not enough to be at home and simply saying, no, I don't agree with this. You have to do something. So I'm going to emphasize that in putting out the UK column Gutsy Women series, I was acknowledging women who are actually standing up to be counted. And these were interviews that I'd done. Top right, Kimberly Isherwood from Public Child Protection Wales. But of course, we've also got the Fornethy women. So a couple of days ago, I was able to interview Kim Isherwood. Now, remember, this lady has made a stand against the grooming of children by the Welsh government, the sexualisation of children in school. And her stand brought other people on board, and then it has gone international. So this is a little interview I did a couple of days ago where Kim was talking about what had happened following their visit to the United States and the World Health Organization conference. Kim, you're back with the other ladies from the States. A little while ago, I was able to do an interview with you where you were very excited that your team were going over to Washington to get together with other people from other countries around the world who are also concerned at what was happening with the grooming of children through the education system. And the plan was that you were all going to challenge the World Health Organization at their conference. How did that go?
It was quite interesting. So the World Health Organization is in a building called Pan American Health Organization. They had a 5-day conference there. They are completely untouchable. They are unreachable. There was a marquee outside where some people were having tea. And considering there was a 5-day conference and this building has the World Health Organization on their sign outside, I'd say about 70% of people going in and out of that building had no idea what the World Health Organization was about. There was no reception desk. There was absolutely no way we could reach anyone at all. So some people might say that was a bit of a flop. However, I don't think that's a flop. I believe that is evidence of how out of reach these people are, how unaccountable they are. And that should show people, that should alarm people that these people have massive influence over our education. All 4 countries in the UK are adopting their guidance and they are unaccountable. unreachable. And that, I think that is a powerful statement, Brian. And I think people should be really concerned about that. So we didn't actually deliver the Declaration of Childhood to the World Health Organization. However, that plan hasn't gone away. We will continue with that, even if we have to go to Geneva. We will make our stance on this situation known one way or another. So I think that's a powerful message to everyone in the UK. These people have a lot of influence over our lives, our children, and our children's sexual development. And the fact that they are completely unreachable, there's no accountability there. This should scream alarm bells, for every single person watching this.
This is a very good point, Kim, because these are the powerful people, but they're hidden in plain sight. In some ways they're hidden, in other ways you can see them, but they are operating at the global level. This is the level of people that when Keir Starmer says he can work with Davos or at Davos because he can get things done. These are the very people forming the policies that Keir Starmer is then implementing nationally. So yes, you by trying to take them on in a democratic way and not being able to do that, it highlights how unaccountable they are. The other thing which you were very excited about was the fact that it wasn't just Public Child Protection Wales team that was going to be there in America. There was going to be people from other countries. How did that bit go?
Fantastic, Brian. I think what we found was there are a load of ladies out there and gentlemen as well with the same heart, the same concerns and the same commitment as us. And, I think that in itself is very powerful. We've got plans moving forward. We've got projects moving forward. And we have developed an international task force. And this international task force is going to concentrate on different projects, throughout this journey. And I've got nothing but admiration for these people. They work in a very similar way to what we work. And, like I said, we are delighted to have met these people, especially the ladies from the Rasmussen Institute as well. And we do have plans to fly these people over to the UK in April in time for our conference and for stage 2 of our plan regarding the bills and legislation that we want to enforce in every country around the world.
Right, let's pick up on one thing straight away. The Rasmussen Institute, that's Judith Rasmussen, no longer with us, but she did so much work to expose the work of Kinsey and his use of paedophiles to produce so-called data on children. Horrific stuff, but that's one of your key points, that's been brought into the education system in UK for very young children. The other thing is, and you just mentioned to me a little bit before we became live today, that you're working now on a bill which you want adopted. Tell us a bit more about that bill.
So back in the 1990s, Judith Rasmussen produced a bill. This bill was to investigate Alfred Kinsey's influence over legislation and education. This bill is supposed to remove all of that stuff. So this was in the 1990s. It got kicked into the long grass. And the ladies from Purple for Parents United, Indiana. So Audrey, who has worked very closely with Judith for over 30 years. Audrey was a sex educator. And there's Rhonda Miller, who is the CEO of Purple for Parents United. They have now revived that bill. And that was the second part of our visit to Washington, D.C. There was an entire day, a full day of meeting congressmen in their offices, presenting this bill, presenting footage of all of us from around the world, explaining what it's done to our country, what it's done to our children. And that was received. Fantastic. I think that was the best part of the whole trip. Highly exciting. So what we've decided is this needs to be a worldwide response. So out in America, the bills have got a code for what they call like HR 5742 and things like that. Over here, bills are named something different. So the bill we have produced for the UK is called the Child Protection and Research Ethics Bill 2026. And this is what we need everybody to get behind. We have 17 parent groups who are willing to get behind it, add their logos and their signatures. We have 2 barristers. We have some politicians out there. And even though we are starting the campaign for this in January, we plan to deliver this bill to Parliament in April during the time that we fly these wonderful ladies over to the UK. So all you guys will get a chance to meet these ladies yourself. You can join us in our conference and we will be going to Parliament to deliver it then. We're unable to deliver it to the Senate at that time in Wales because we'll be going through an election. However, it will be handed in after the May election has taken place. This is something we're excited about. We are not naive enough to think that this is going to go through first time. You know, this started in the 90s with Judith and it was kicked into the long grass. But the fact that all of these countries are on board on this project is tailored to our own country's needs. We've already got people behind it. We're going to keep pushing it. We've got a piece of paper that we can actually fight with now, Brian, you know, an actual bill, a piece of legislation that should have been enforced a long, long time ago. So that's something we're massively excited about. I know our followers are delighted with that as well. And I cannot wait to see what the next year brings.
Well, what a fantastic woman. And she has achieved so much initially with the drive and enthusiasm, her own drive and enthusiasm. But of course, that brought other people on board. And this is the whole point, that if we sit and do nothing, we achieve nothing. And if we stand up to start doing things, we can achieve a huge amount. So from South Wales to international, all is the work of this group, Public Child Protection Wales. We just pop that up on the screen so that people can see the website. And of course, what are these amazing women doing? They're taking action to stop the state sexually grooming children through the education system. Diane, welcome to the news. And of course, you've been tracking what's been happening through the universities and the libraries. What have you got?
Yeah, thanks, Brian. Really great to be here in Plymouth with you today. And hello to everyone out there. And also thank you again for making me one of your gutsy women back in the past.
Pleasure.
Thank you. So last week in the American Library Association was Banned Books Week. And I want to look at this because we do have direct connections, obviously, with the child grooming that's going on in libraries and schools and in the UK and increasingly throughout the world. So last week was Banned Books Week, according to the American Library Association and others. So who is the chair of Banned Books Week 2025? Actually, it's George Takei. Let's hear what George had to say about Banned Books Week.
I'm George Takei, Honorary Chair of Banned Books Week 2025. As one of 125,000 Japanese Americans incarcerated in U.S. concentration camps during World War II, I know what it means to lose freedom. My graphic memoir, They Called Us Enemy, tells that story, and it has been banned multiple times. Why? Because it reveals unvarnished American history and shows how freedom can be taken away. Today, books about LGBTQ lives, including stories like my own, are also being targeted in schools, libraries, and bookstores across the country. Those who ban books want to lock away ideas they fear, but in truth, they are trying to steal our freedom to choose what we read and what our children read, our freedom to learn our full history, our freedom to see and understand each other. Banned Books Week is a time to remind our communities that access to books and knowledge is essential to democracy. Readers deserve to see themselves reflected in the stories we tell and to discover the stories of others. So together, let's stand up for the freedom to read so that all Americans can find ourselves and find each other in books. Learn more at bannedbooksweek.org.
So what do you think, Brian? Are there any banned books? What do you think?
Are books being banned?
No, they're not, actually. No. What it does mean, though, however, is that some books maybe are not age appropriate for children.
Correct.
And as you might see, George Takei's book is sort of a graphic novel style, which typically appeals to young people, which I do not believe is age appropriate considering some of the content that is in that particular book. So let's take a look at some of this in greater detail, where this comes from and where it leads to. So the American Library Association has something that's called the Office for Intellectual Freedom, which actually, if you look at it, is really kind of the opposite. We look at things like that go in front of adults and in front of university students, that they want to ban those things, but they want to put everything possible in front of children. And that's kind of their whole agenda. Every library and other associations are called grassroots organizations, but they have huge amounts of funding that are part of or related to in some way the American Library Association. Here's one of their things that they did last week for Banned Books Week. It's called Read On, Tools to Help You Prepare for and Respond to Book Challenges. So what happens in America is that you can actually challenge books. It's what they call it. Concerned parents, grandparents, and other citizens who believe that things like violence, sexual content, etc., should not be placed in children's sections in public libraries or in school libraries. So this was an instruction manual, essentially, or an instruction webinar for librarians on how to deal with the pesky idea that children should not be looking at certain things and that parents want to bring this up, and what can we do with those horrible homophobic parents. American Library Association has the top 10 most challenged books every year. The list from 2024, the number of books that are mostly LGBTQ or sexualized content in general is very high, and they're mostly written for children, not based on the content, but based on the reading level. So we can say something it maybe is for children, but the content is not, just based on the words that are used in the book. So I Heart Libraries is another one of these organizations that talks about Banned Books Week in relation to the American Library Association. They have a whole website. All of these links to these organizations will be in the show notes. Amanda Jones, I don't know if anybody remembers when I talked about Miss Jones last year, I believe it was, on UK Column. She wrote this book called That Librarian, which has a large range of I wouldn't say that it was academic or intellectual or library professional information, but it certainly was a polemic about how much her life was horrible when people started to challenge the books that she was putting in front of children. So if we look at this information here, she is now one of the world's most influential rising stars in the top 100, according to Time magazine. And she has a wonderful profile written about her by Sarah Jessica Parker, who is the executive producer of a documentary that was released recently called The Librarians, which features librarians like Amanda who are all about putting sexual content in front of children. And this is a quote from the book that I reviewed for the Scottish Union of Education and as well as here on UK Column last year. And I just want to read the words of Amanda Jones that was in this book that has all kinds of funding behind it. Quote, "Have you ever just wanted to punch someone in the face with all your might? Maybe someone has said something awful to you, and the thought crossed your mind that a good ass whooping, sorry, Brian, would wipe the smirk off their face and teach them a lesson. I don't advocate violence, but I have thought about how good it would be to feel my haters in the groin." And the haters are the people, of course, who are challenging putting this content in front of children. The Influence Watch website talks about ALA, and we can see their budget from 2022 is billions and millions of dollars, $91 million in assets as of 2022. So there is obviously huge amounts of globalist funding and other types of funding going behind the American Library Association. This is their number one banned book from 2024 called All Boys Aren't Blue by George M. Johnson. If I could just quickly read the synopsis from the back cover there, saying, George, by the way, is a they, them. From getting their teeth kicked out by bullies at age 5, to their loving family relationships, to their first sexual experience, there we go. Those powerful stories wrestle with triumph and tragedy, weaving a rich tapestry of experiences both everyday and extraordinarily. Covering topics such as gender identity, toxic masculinity, brotherhood, inequality, Consent and Black Joy. George's remarkable story is a story for us all. Now you might think, okay, that's fine. He's got a story to tell. However, if we look at libraries around the UK and around the West, this one is placed on the shelf in the children's nonfiction section. This is from a library here in England, up in the Northeast, in the sort of the Stockton-on-Tees, I believe it is, from this library. And we can see the subject descriptions include juvenile literature, gaze, identity, juvenile literature, teenage nonfiction, audience level adolescent, and it is placed in the children's nonfiction material. This was in York Libraries. This is York Explore, but this is around the country. We can find these examples. So at this point, I would like to bring in Cathy Mudge, who is a guest with us today. She's been on UK Column previously, on Interview with Me, and on the news. She is from Protect and Teach. Cathy, welcome. And could you tell us about some of the amazing activism work that you have been doing locally, please?
Yeah, sure. Well, we went to our local library, Exeter, and we went around the shelves and found 4 books, which you've got posted there. We could have probably found more if we looked longer, and we decided to challenge the librarians about their books and the content in the books. So we asked to speak to the librarian manager. He came down to speak to us, and we showed him the book, and we explained our concerns about the fact that it discusses sexuality. It actually teaches children about gender identity, sexual relationships, and different families. And we felt it was inappropriate that it was in the children's section. All brightly coloured to attract children in. We found the average age of children going in was 8, is unaccompanied by adults. So from 8 years old, they can pick these books up.
So I've got a few examples of books that you sent me from your visit to the library. If you could maybe just, I'll put these on the screen. If you can just tell us what these books are, and just to say that people can look up these titles for themselves if they would like to do so.
Okay, well, first of all, as you can see, it's LGBTQ+. What is the plus? No one ever tells us that bit. It's advertising the flag. That's the Pride Progress flag. The inverted V is to do with trans children. And basically, we call it the trans mutilation flag, because the child mutilation flag, because that's really what it represents. So whenever you see that flying, be very aware that they're targeting children. It's not just about the LGB. The LGB are trying to reclaim just the rainbow stripes and the rainbow flag. So that was one book we found. Again, you can see on the front there, it's all about, it's mixing things up. It's queering children, really. Again, linking in with your earlier talk that you had about Wales and the work they're doing there. All of these books, we don't want them banned. We just want them in the adult section. If an adult wants to get it out, by all means do, but I don't think that children should be able to. They're also holding a queer day there, a queer fest on Saturday in Exeter Library, where children and families are invited to go in and discuss being queer and how to introduce LGBTQ into your school.
Yeah.
Yep. And so we've got here, if we could go on to the decolonization issue, Cathy, as I've covered previously on UK Column, decolonization in university settings and museums and increasingly other organizations are basically what they're doing is changing curriculum, changing books in libraries, changing what students are being taught at all levels, because we can't, for example, have white men from Britain. Sorry, Brian, not allowed, because, you need to be decolonized. So here's an example from the University of Exeter, decolonizing your reading list. And so this is happening in universities around the UK. So anything written by a straight white man, sorry again, Brian, needs to be decolonized because it is no longer considered to be inclusive or diverse enough. So Cathy, just a bit more here that you've done some FOIs on what they were doing with decolonizing the library collections at the University of Exeter. So what happened when you sent that FOI?
So following up from working with children, we wanted to find out what they were doing with their books and the books they were teaching teachers with at Exeter Library. So we sent an FOI in which we wanted to find out the minutes of their decolonisation meeting that they held regularly and who was funding them, because we'd really like to know who's paying for this decolonisation, where the money's coming from, because I think that would be very interesting. And they refused the first 2 questions of our FOI, which you can see there. And they said they didn't hold any information. They basically done a computer search and they didn't show up. So I didn't believe that that was possible, that you didn't have minutes of meetings, which sound as though someone would have been keeping them somewhere. So I asked for an internal review. And again, after the internal review, they felt happy that the computer search they'd done on my original questions was fine. So I've now sent it on further to the Ombudsman. Hopefully we might get some feedback there, but minutes should not be hidden. What are they doing there? They're involving young people. That's what we found. We found from their pictures, from texts on Twitter and stuff, asking young people which books they'd like to be removed from Exeter University. So they start at university at 18 and start removing the books that they should be being taught on. And as you know, there's an issue with that then for people who want to get books out.
Absolutely. So I think the real hypocrisy here that's going on, Brian, is that we're attacking the children and putting everything in front of them. And if we don't agree with putting sexual content in front of children in the library sections, then we are somehow homophobic. And if we are against the fact that we are removing things like British history from British libraries and British university teaching, then we are not inclusive. So we see the inversion happening here, Brian.
Yeah, absolute inversion.
Absolutely. So what I would like to point out is tomorrow I have an article that's being published on the Scottish Union for Education Substack, which will be available. And I'll also continue to maybe share that through UK Column as well, if that's possible. This will be about my coverage that I've done previously on Granddad's Pride, Granddad's Camper, where we see exactly what they're trying to do with children to parentify children and to put symbols in front of children that do not belong in front of them. So that's quite an extensive article that will be out tomorrow, Brian. And just so everyone is aware, next year's Banned Books Week has already been announced for the 4th through 10th of October, 2026. So we have something to work toward, not to support, but to say no books are banned. They are just maybe hopefully placed in the right place in the library, Brian.
Yes. Okay. Well, we thank Cathy for that report. And of course, Cathy is another activist that has absolutely been pressing to expose what's actually happening. Now then, we've got come on to a slightly different section now, because we're back on the subject of activism. And back in 2021, UK Column was reporting on a lady called Debbie Hicks, who had exposed that a hospital, Gloucester Hospital, was empty with regard to COVID patients. And she was ultimately arrested for filming an empty hospital. This is how desperate the system was. I spoke to Debbie a couple of days ago, and she was telling me about an event on the 25th of October, what it's about and what she is trying to do as an activist. So absolutely, we're staying on this theme of activism and these wonderful women who are making things happen. They are not sitting at home just commenting about what's taking place. So let's have a listen to what Debbie Hicks had to say. Hello, Debbie. Thank you very much for joining UK Column News today. Now, a little while ago, I was given an advert for an event in Cardiff. It was near the Nye Bevan statue. Nye Bevan, of course, being the man who created the NHS. And the leaflet or the advert was about no to digital ID and no to conscription in the military. So you've been helping set this up. What is it about and what do you hope to achieve?
Yeah, the event is a day of outreach that's planned. It's not a rally. It's not a march. It's a day of outreach. So we're planning to leaflet as many people as possible about digital ID and about conscription, and to go around to shops and businesses and talk to them and have as many conversations as possible. So it's about digital ID. It's about resisting digital ID, about how to not comply, saying no, what people can do, but also linking it together with the likelihood, the very strong likelihood of war conscription in this country that Keir Starmer and Rishi Sunak have talked about over the last couple of years. So it's putting those two messages together to get people to see that this digital ID is likely to be used for war conscription, to coerce people.
Debbie, I certainly share your concerns over that. And a little while ago, Charles Mallet and myself did a recorded conversation about the military advantages. I can look back on my own career, and there was a lot of time that I really enjoyed. I learnt lots of things out of it. But the thought of fighting one of these proxy wars on behalf of Keir Starmer, truly frightening, a really disgusting thing. And both Charles and myself felt that we couldn't, in 2025, recommend the military as a career to young people because of the risks. That's one point. And the point I'd make to you is that we discovered a little while ago that the MOD was boasting it had more young cadets than actual people in the military in the British Army. So there's no doubt at all that they are eyeing up young people as a means to filling the armed forces, presumably for yet more proxy wars overseas.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, for me, I'm, one of my driving forces as an activist. I've been an activist most of my life. Last 5 years, I've been quite prolific and known for my anti-lockdown activism and also for keeping cash. And my driving force in particular is my young son. I've got an 18-year-old son. Not just my son, I just see this whole younger generation. I don't want to see them as cannon fodder, Brian. I'm sorry, I don't want to lose my son in a bankers' war. I can't do it. And I just feel if there's any time in history where people are more aware of what wars are about, we've got all that history, that whole never again. What happened to saying never again? The war to end all wars. And I just feel like now's the time when we can go out and put the message over that there are ways to resist, and that we need to see that these digital systems are likely to coerce our children, and that fighting back with that is the way to do it.
Now, something that is an important part about this gathering of people in Cardiff, and just to make sure, it's the 25th of October at 11 o'clock. But you're talking about leafleting, you're talking about talking to members of the public and shops and businesses. So this is not about a loud protest with banners. This is about trying to actually engage the public and educate them really as to the concerns that you've got. Is that right?
Absolutely. It's a good conversation, really. It's my particular style of activism that I've done over the years that I enjoy, and I feel it works. And I feel with a topic like this, with digital ID, which we know is very unpopular, and war, of course, no one wants war. No one wants their children to do this. I wouldn't imagine many people will anyway. I feel that we can do this in a non-partisan way. It's not going to alienate people. It's a topic that I think everyone will understand if we talk to them. The beauty of this kind of outreach is we can do something called cascading, something I learned from years ago when I used to be involved in Labour politics for my sins. We're going to that. But it's this idea, it really works actually, is if you have a conversation with somebody and they agree with you, you say, can you please have that conversation with somebody else? And if they agree with you, ask them to do the same. And it's just a really powerful way of getting those conversations going. And anybody that's listening can do the same if you agree with what we're talking about today, with what I'm talking about. Do that with a friend, do it with family, and ask them to do the same.
Yeah, Debbie, this is excellent, and it certainly fits the encouragement the UK column's been giving the audience of not to just sit there and get depressed and anxious at what's happening, is to actually stand up and do something. And what you're suggesting is very easy. Start a conversation. Doesn't work, you move on to the next person. But when it does work, you ask them to share that. Now, you've also got some quite high-profile guests for your gathering. You've got Andrew Bridgen and Piers Corbyn. Are there going to be some formal talks to the public present?
My opening speech is just to kind of rally people up and get them thinking about these things. Quite somber kind of message in a way, what we're talking about, but also to rally people up and say, come on, we can mobilise. We can get out. We can do things like we did during lockdown with the risk of COVID passports. We were all out over the country doing this during 2021. And I feel it actually made a big difference, actually. So I think we need to do that again. We need that spirit. We need that energy. And I'm hoping these events will really buoy people up with Andrew and Piers. Yeah.
Right, that's absolutely great. Final comment for me. It's really interesting, but it appears that South Wales in particular has got a lot of drive amongst the public. You've got all the tremendous efforts of Kim Isherwood and her team doing Public Child Protection Wales. I've been speaking to several other people in South Wales over the last few days, and they're all talking about being active, getting people to go out and communicate with people, not just to be on the streets with a banner shouting. So really fascinating segment there, and lots of positive advice about how to actually make things happen with other people. For anybody that can get to Cardiff on the 15th, this is the details. So the meeting is at 11 o'clock in the morning, and it's next to the Bevan statue in that should be statue in Queen Street in Cardiff. So if you can get there, please do. And I was referring to a discussion between myself and Charles Mallet to do with does your country need you? Should you join up to the military? And that's it on screen. Now, we'd like to say that many people still don't understand that UK Column has got a website, and we've had a website, of course, for nearly the 20 years we've been going. If you have a look at it, there are thousands of videos and articles, a huge amount of information. And to get best effect of the website, if you've got a topic, go onto UK Column website and actually use the search bar to see what information and articles and video clips come up. As a way of starting your research, and of course also finding your way around the enormous amount of material that's on our website. If you want to help us and become a member to support our work, then of course you can go to this part of the website and click here, and you can join up as a member. You can make a donation, and of course you can buy something through the UK Column shop. And anything you choose to buy, of course, helps us out, because we can only do what we do because of the wonderful financial support by members and supporters. Now, we've got more information coming up on the UK Column stream. We've got Germ Warfare tonight at 7 with Bruce Fenton. He's having a look at the origins of the human race, and this is just an open discussion on where humans came from in the beginning and how they migrated throughout the world. So that's fascinating. We've also got Charles Mallet with Morgan Lorette, and that's entitled A World Full of Mercenaries. That's tomorrow at 1 p.m. The Patrick Henningsen talk from the Hope Freedom Music Festival a little while ago. That's now up on the UK Column website. Do have a listen to what Pat had to say. And of course, there'll be further information and talks from the rest of the UK Column team. Now, we've got this one, which is another major event in London, central London, at 1 p.m. Saturday, the 18th of October. This is to protest against digital ID and all the laws coming in around that. And Patrick Henningsen will be present in London, so that will be worth attending if you can. And I think we've got a couple here for you, Diane. Is that right?
Yeah, thanks, Brian. This is an article that was published on the UK Column website a few days ago. Speaking of all of the thousands of articles we have on the website, this one is by Sarah Newland. This is part 1 of 2 about surrogacy, about the dystopian situation around surrogacy and what it causes and what's happening. And she spoke about this article and her work on surrogacy just a few days ago on Wake Up with Sonia Poulton. So check out her interview there and also read the article on our website. And as well as talking about digital ID events, I will be speaking at a major digital ID event in Newcastle on the 1st of November at the Monument at 12 noon, along with Fiona Rose Diamond and at least one other speaker. So it should be a great event if you are with me up in the north, or if you're not, come to see me anyway up in Newcastle on the 1st of November.
Okay, thank you very much. All about activism, meeting people, meeting up, being able to do things together. So this is very positive stuff. Lastly, just give another mention, of course, to UK Column on Location coming up this Saturday. It's going to be brilliant to see you all. I'll just say that we are pressing as much as we can for anybody who's up in the area on Friday to register, book in for the UK Column event between 6:30 and 8 o'clock. This will help us on the Saturday morning ease some of the pressure of people coming through. But it's going to be wonderful to meet you there. And of course, we will be talking to the online audience. So if you can't come to the actual event, well, all the tickets are gone now. But if you want to come in over the internet, then you can get an online ticket, and we will be speaking to you as if you were in the room with us. Diane, you've got a quick update on Fornethy.
Yes.
Fornethy ladies.
Yes, thanks, Brian. So the Fornethy residential school trial against Patricia Robertson, I can say at this point that the jury is out. We are currently waiting for a decision. There was some mainstream media coverage of the start of the trial a few weeks ago. Here's one example from STV News talking about the start of the trial. This was just from the first day, but I can say that the trial is almost over as soon as we get a decision. I went to attend one day of the trial and listened to some testimonies from, at the time, was 3 former staff at Fornethy Residential School who testified, examined by the Crown prosecution. And here's just a photo of some of the women that were with me who are Fornethy survivors who have been attending almost every day of the trial. This was outside of the High Court in Glasgow. And some of these women are familiar to UK Column because Brian has interviewed them previously as gutsy women. So more women speaking out and trying to fight for their rights and justice that they deserve.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Diane. Vanessa, let's bring you back with us. And you've got a report about what's happening with children, and I think including trafficking of children.
Looks very much like it. I mean, basically, somebody tagged me into a video post yesterday on X, which was slightly alarming when I first looked at it, but got increasingly more alarming the deeper down the bunny hole that I went. So let's just play, first of all, a section of the video that was on X, and this is Tim Ballard speaking.
We just crossed, I think this is our 177th border crossing in the last 48 hours. The way we infilled was not traditional, but very much deliberate. We basically leveraged several different partnerships, but look, you don't know who is who anywhere, especially when you enter Syria. Once we got in, it was mission accomplished. We got to see everything. We saw all the people we wanted to see. We got the evidence we needed. This evidence is going to be valuable because it's the thing that triggers the clause in the agreement between Syria, U.S., and Jordan that allows the United States to come in and secure the corridor. So that was very key to get that evidence, but really it was to see the kids, see the people, bring hope to them, let them know that people do love them. They feel very unloved, and I don't blame them because nobody in the entire world of billions of people has done much of anything. It's just crazy.
So that's the introduction to Tim Ballard that I had yesterday, and then I started to look into it. So first of all, from a political perspective, we've spoken many times. This is an article in Haaretz, fairly recent one, that Israel was basically weaponizing the conflict that grew out of Jolani's attacks through the tribal forces on the communities of Sweida in southern Syria that led to some appalling massacres. Israel seeks humanitarian corridor of influence in Syria, threatening regime stability. Regime, of course, is now the al-Qaeda regime put in power by the British, Israel, Turkey, and the US. This is just quickly to show people the map. So the yellow arrow at the bottom, going from the occupied Golan territory, which is Syrian territory, of course, being gifted to Israel by President Trump, shows how the humanitarian corridor that Israel wants to create will cross through Dara in the south and into Sweida, and then join with what is known as the David Corridor, which will give Israel access up the eastern border with Iraq and Jordan and Syria, and join up with the Kurdish separatist factions in the northeast. So that's the political aspect of what Tim Ballard is doing, and that's what I was first focused on. And here he is in the same video, basically confirming that he's working for Israel. So if we just run this.
But it was mission accomplished, and now we got to get to Jerusalem to get the information to the right government officials to go to the next phase, which is establish a corridor, get provisions, and continue to liberate and restore.
So very clear confirmation there that he is working for the Israeli regime in securing their assets in southern Syria. Then I started to look into who is Tim Ballard, and this came up as the Tim Ballard Foundation, which is where the alarm bells started to sound very loudly. As you can see there, he's a vigilante focusing on ending child trafficking. Now, as soon as I see that, generally speaking, particularly in American NGOs or UK government-backed NGOs, I immediately start to get highly suspicious that rather than preventing child trafficking, they might actually have a hand in facilitating it. Very close to President Trump. This was back in 2019. He was brought into Trump's administration to help Trump argue for a border wall in the south with Mexico, on the basis, of course, that it will halt sex trafficking. He's from Utah. That's why Tim Ballard on Trump's right there is with him and is very, very close to Trump even now, which, of course, immediately also made me start thinking of the Epstein files and Trump's refusal to release information, because it's very difficult to avoid that kind of connection when we're looking at someone who's dealing as a vigilante with the extraction of children from child trafficking rings, allegedly. Then let's have a look at this is an interview that he did very recently in the last few days with a Christian Zionist outfit called Media Line. The headline there says it all: Tim Ballard sacrifices all to save Syrian children. Again, alarm bells are going off. And I just took out the main details from the article on Tim Ballard, which again are not going to be very reassuring. Over a decade as a special agent for the Department of Homeland Security, close friends, as he says in the article, with President Trump, working with the Israeli regime to access Sweden, as we've just mentioned, promoting the Abraham Accords, which of course is normalization with the Gulf Arab states, with Israel, and he's pushing Syria towards such a normalization. He was in Iraq 2017 to 19. He allegedly evacuated 10,000 Yazidis and Christians to Australia. He was also involved in Haiti. He adopted 2 children himself, which according to Against Child Trafficking is nothing more than legalized trafficking if you're actually going to adopt a child from its indigenous country and bring it outside of that country to another culture. And currently he's pivoting towards Latin America, of course, as Trump is ramping up propaganda, particularly against Venezuela. Again, then I started to go further. This was an article in the New York Times in October 2024. To the world, he's an anti-trafficking hero. Women tell a different story. So what is this all about? Effectively, 6 women have brought cases of aggravated abuse and assault against them, sexual abuse. If we actually look at one of the examples in the article itself, and then I'll cover several more. In interviews and legal papers, the women described similar scenarios. Mr. Ballard recruited them to act as his romantic partner in undercover operations in which they would pose as wealthy sex tourists, a tactic he referred to as a couple's ruse. It had 2 purposes, he told them. It provided an easy excuse to avoid having sexual contact with the sex workers, and some people might be more open to confiding in a woman. Apparently, the role play went beyond the actual operation. What he would say is that as they're constantly under surveillance by the trafficking gangs, he would have to prove to them that he had a sexual relationship with the women that he had trapped into, as they believed, helping children. So he would sexually assault them in the car or in the hotel room, in the office, and so on. He was also reported as having handed over money to sex traffickers to procure underage teenagers for sex. which, as someone said, that's tantamount to creating a market for the very thing that he's ostensibly trying to prevent. He created, or he was the subject of a film called The Sound of Freedom. The executive producer on that, Paul Hutchison, was actually filmed, for want of a better word, groping an underage teenager on film. Ballard excused that behavior by saying that he had invested heavily in Ballard's operations. Hutchinson himself has now started a child liberation foundation, again, to rescue children from sex trafficking. So I just want to play this section of his latest interview, Ballard's latest interview with Medialine, where he protests the cases against him.
Before, so it's all going to come out. You know, it's funny that when I won in court in Utah, the media in Utah, who's owned and controlled by the very people who are trying to keep me looking bad, because if I'm guilty, if I'm innocent, they're guilty, right? And so they'll do anything. So I literally win in court, and they spin and lie to make me look like the bad guy. Like, it's unbelievable. Don't trust any news outlet, right? None of them are Matthew 18 compliant.
Matthew 18 compliant. I mean, I have to say he is an out-and-out Christian Zionist. That is very clear from many of his interviews and statements in the media. The fact is that the case was not actually withdrawn. This was only one of the lawsuits filed against Operation Underground Railroad, which was his original organization. He's actually been sacked, according to Operation Underground Railroad, that is now known as Our Rescue. He claims that he left on the basis of claims of sexual abuse and so on. But effectively, it was dismissed, not because of the merits of the case were lacking, but he said the case must be dismissed. Sorry, could I just have that back on? It was dismissed because of the way evidence against Ballard was obtained. Celeste Boris, one of the women bringing the case against Ballard, accused him of grooming and sexually assaulting her when they were supposed to be on operations to save children from human trafficking. And for evidence, she downloaded more than 90 documents from Ballard's email. Boris worked under Ballard as his executive assistant, including after he was accused of sexual misconduct and permanently separated from OUR. As I said, I've only just started really in the last 24 hours to go down this really rather sinister and sordid bunny hole. But the fact that this guy is now in southern Syria actively involved with the so-called rescue of children, I find extremely disturbing.
Vanessa, thank you very much for that report. The key bit is that truth is coming up to the surface, and its exposure, which is the first thing which has to happen in order to deal with these horrible things happening. So thank you for all your effort in keeping tabs on what's happening there. Now, we're coming towards the end of today's UK column news. Diane, you're going to give us a little bit of a light-hearted look at fear, I think.
Yes, Brian, I think the only thing that we can do at this point is laugh at the fear that they are putting in front of us, especially as it relates to the fact that it is now autumn and getting colder, and therefore we are all apparently going to fall dead of sore throats, from what I've heard. Does that make any sense?
No.
No. Okay. Well, let's look at it anyway. So let's start at the BBC. They posted here on the 30th of September that COVID cases are rising with new variants Nimbus and Stratus. Now, I kind of like the pun, right? Because Nimbus and Stratus are both clouds. So we're rising to the clouds with Nimbus and Stratus. And, you know, they're absolutely miserable to have a sore throat. Look at that poor man, right? It's a little bit. So we started with the BBC. And, you know, if you have a sore throat, you need to call your doctor. You need to line up for whatever medication they want to put into your... Yeah, whatever's waiting. So the UK Health Security Agency posted on Facebook on the 9th of October that respiratory viruses circulate all year, but during winter, several circulate at the same time. So I guess only one circulates during the summer. Is that what it means, Brian?
Who knows? Because the advice changes regularly, and it's so confusing and nonsensical.
It certainly does. But the sad emoji and the fingers pointing downward give the UK HSA quite a bit of credibility, I think. Especially the woman who apparently is coughing through her hand, which they told us in 2020 wasn't safe. Right? Weird. Yeah, true. So she's spreading viruses, coughing into her hand there.
Should be put in prison.
Absolutely. Lock her up. So up from where I am in the Northeast normally, except this week when I'm in Plymouth, this is from County Durham, live with one of the mainstream papers where I live, where I'm not sure what the mask is doing to help anybody, because the mask had to be moved down to stick the swab up the lady's nose. So I'm not sure why she's masked up. It doesn't really do any good if it's not, obviously over the nose, not helping anything. But we have a new vaccine warning because the so-called COVID cases are rising across the Northeast. So make sure you're lining up if you haven't done so already. Have you lined up, Brian?
No, I haven't, and I won't be.
Good, thank you. Devon Live, so locally here, where we are in Devon, I've gone from my house to yours. Medical experts have explained when YIOU, so we've got a typo there, that I think maybe the vaccine got to their spelling abilities, need to test, and when you need to see a GP. So exactly how to tell if you have a cold or the new COVID strain. So do you have a Stratus or a Nimbus COVID, or what do you have?
Well, of course, it's nonsense because nobody can get to see a GP anyway. So the advice is completely rubbish because you cannot see a GP.
That's a very good point. And so Yorkshire Live, so sort of just south of me, new COVID strain or flu, how to tell different symptoms apart this winter. I'm not sure what that is. Is that an insect? That little green looking, is that a
cucumber possibly?
Cucumber, yeah, maybe half a virus. Yeah, something healthy, maybe. I don't know. Anyways, the emoji needed a tissue, so there we go. According to this particular source, the new study finds COVID-19 infection can alter sperm and affect brain development in future children. Can't be the vaccine. It's got to be the COVID infection. That cold is going to affect the sperm of these men who want to conceive children. Can't be the vaccine, can it, Brian?
Well, and the phrase future children to me is very creepy. So that's a special little advert.
Future children, that might be that dystopian surrogacy that Sarah Newland has been writing about for us. The Express says Brits urged to do so isolate. So again, there's those spelling and grammatical issues occurring in people in the mainstream. Occurred to do isolate now if infected with new COVID strain as cases soar. Now, my biggest question, and I put this one on my own Facebook page, Brian, is why is it that the woman is masked up all alone in her house? Who is she going to give? Does she have a dog that might get the virus? Like what? I don't know. So the Daily Mail said to us on the 13th of October, quote, like a biological bomb, scary emoji, haunting prediction of where next pandemic will strike and how it could kill over 7 million. So we don't know what this is, but it could be that scary virus is out there. It could get us any moment. We don't know where, but it's out there.
We're putting a bit of black humor into this, but of course, many people out there are sucking up this information and it's making them very fearful of the future. So I'll just clarify that what we're doing today by mocking this stuff is one, to boost morale, but also to get people out there spreading the word about what disgraceful political applied psychology this is.
Yeah, no, it is. We have to laugh at it because it's about the only way that we can fight it, I believe. But we also have to say, well, this is what is out there on these Facebook posts. And I found these all on my Facebook feed. So even though we might think that, they're not worth listening to, clearly people are, because they're continuously pushing out this content for people to get afraid about the fact that their throat hurts. So just one last thing I have here, and this is obviously not true. Breaking news is AstraZeneca is now available in powder form to encourage more people to get vaccinated. And this, I'm on my third bag today, said one woman. So she's doing lines. I personally, if it were powder, I'd probably mix it in with my coffee or tea instead of, I don't like putting anything in my nose. So, but she has chosen to just do some lines.
Okay, we'll leave it there. We'll leave it there, Diane. But if people can smile, they are doing a great job in boosting their physical and mental well-being to deal with this stuff. Now, we must end because we've run over slightly for today's UK column news. But my last comment is a very positive one, is that yesterday I was able to be with Kate Markland, who was telling me how a single FaceTime call once a week with her son, who's been taken away from her by social services, that single call once a week for 9 months allowed them to develop a book. We just popped the image up on screen. Initially 6 short stories, now a 258-page book. So good has this exercise been that Kate has been invited into 9 schools and has helped over 460 children in various schools to also learn how to write stories for themselves. So there's a very positive note for a mum who suffered the horrors of having a child taken away from her. But by using that telephone call, she's done tremendous good, not only for her son, Gabriel, but also for herself and other mothers. We must end there. We've got UK Column Extra coming up for our members. We've got a lot to discuss. We'll also have guest Kimberly Isherwood, who will be telling us more about her activism. And I will be surrounded by gutsy women. That's it for today. We'll be back for UK Column News on losing track of my days. Where are we? We will have a